Have you ever picked up a translation of an ancient text and just wondered, how do we actually know this is what it said? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that very question. We're becoming text detectives.
So let's just dive right in with a huge question. How do you read a story from 1500 years ago exactly as the author wrote it? Well, the short answer is you can't. Not perfectly. And that's where our whole mystery begins.
You see, for pretty much every ancient text you can think of, the original document, what scholars call the ur-text, is gone. It's lost to time. We don't have the scroll that Plato himself wrote on. It just doesn't exist anymore. So, if the originals are gone, what are we left with? Copies. And here's the kicker. Before the printing press, every single one of those copies was made by hand. Just picture a scribe for hours and hours, copying an entire book. Mistakes weren't just possible, they were basically guaranteed.
Now, to make this all feel a little more real, we're going to zoom in on one of the most incredible manuscript traditions on the planet, the one from Ethiopia and Eritrea. We'll be looking at the work of projects like Beta Masa Ahaft. Think of this as our main case file.
All right, so first things first, in any investigation, we need to understand the crime scene. And for us, that's the problem of copies. Every single time a text was copied by hand, it had the chance to change, just a little bit, creating this massive, tangled web of different versions over the centuries.
Which, of course, leads us to the heroes of our story. If you've got a complex mystery, you need some brilliant detectives to solve it, so let's meet them. The field these detectives work in is called philology. Now, it sounds super academic, I know, but it comes from Greek and it literally just means love of words. And that's exactly what it is, a deep, passionate dive into understanding the history of texts. And the main tool in their detective kit, that's called textual criticism. Its whole reason for being is to tackle that one giant question. With all these different copies, all filled with different little mistakes, how in the world do we piece together a version that's as close to the original as we can possibly get? Now, we get to the really clever part, the big twist in our story. You'd think that errors and mistakes are just junk, right? Things to ignore. But for our detectives, it's the complete opposite. The errors are everything. They're the clues.
Here is the absolute central idea. Instead of throwing out a manuscript because it has a mistake, philologists realized that the mistakes themselves are like fingerprints. They are the most valuable pieces of evidence left behind by the scribe.
So let's look at a few of these fingerprints. A super simple one is called didography. The scribe just kind of zones out for a split second and oops, they write the same word or phrase twice. Easy to do and usually pretty easy to spot. Okay, this one's a bit more complex. It's called homoteliaton. This happens when two words, maybe a few lines apart, have really similar endings. The scribe copies the first one, then their eye accidentally jumps down to the second one, and they just skip the entire chunk of text in between. Poof! A whole paragraph can vanish just like that.
And then you get something called banalization. This one's interesting because it's almost intentional. A scribe comes across a really rare or weird word and thinks, that can't be right, and they fix it by swapping it out for a more common word. They're trying to be helpful, but they actually end up changing what the author originally wrote.
So here's where it all comes together. When two different manuscripts have the exact same unusual error, it's almost impossible they both made that same weird mistake by themselves. It means one was probably copied from the other, or they were both copied from a shared ancestor that had the mistake. By tracking these shared errors, scholars can literally build a family tree, or a stemma codicum, showing how every copy is related. And once you have that family tree, you've got a roadmap. It unlocks the whole puzzle. With a clear picture of how all the copies are related, our detectives can finally start to rebuild the original text. The finished product, the result of all this investigation, isn't just another book. It's a scholarly masterpiece known as a critical edition.
So what's actually in one of these? Well, you've got four main parts. An introduction that explains all the manuscripts they used, then the main event, the reconstructed text, which is the editor's best hypothesis, and some helpful guides at the back. But the real heart and soul of the whole thing is part 3, the critical apparatus.
Yeah, I know. You look at the bottom of the page in one of these books and you see this dense-looking code. It looks totally intimidating, but really, it's just the detective's notebook, laid bare for everyone to see all the evidence. Let's decode it.
See? That little line of code is just shorthand. It's the editor saying, okay, for the main text, I chose the word Wailada. Why? Because manuscripts B, C, O, and T all have it. But just so you know, manuscripts L and T have a different word, usma, in that exact same spot. Every decision, every piece of evidence is right there. It's totally transparent.
So why go through all this incredibly detailed, painstaking work? Let's bring it back to our case study and see the real-world payoff by looking at Ethiopia's textual treasures. This matters because this isn't just some academic game of spot the difference. This detective work is how we rescue huge chunks of human history, philosophy, and art from being lost in a fog of copying errors. And through this work on the manuscripts from the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, we get access to this stunningly diverse world of knowledge. We're talking about the Bible, of course, but also unique books of hymns, complex philosophy, books on science and calendars, legal texts, even grammar books. It's the library of a civilization brought back into focus. And this is not some lost art. This is a living, breathing field of study. This vital work is happening right now in universities all over the world, including right at the source in places like Addis Ababa University, where a whole new generation of text detectives is being trained. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? As these detectives keep working, what other hidden histories, what forgotten ideas or lost stories are just sitting there, waiting to be uncovered, one corrected word at a time?